In October this past year, I asked the government their selective reversal of the carbon tax for Atlantic Canadians that heat their homes with fuel oil. Now, incidentally, about 25% of Atlantic Canadians heat their homes with fuel oil, as opposed to 6% in the rest of the country, and about 0% in my province of Alberta. But there's no reduction offered elsewhere in Canada, just in Atlantic Canada. And the rationale was explained by this government's Newfoundland regional minister. She said, perhaps they need to elect more Liberals on the prairies. It's a rare moment of frank honesty from a Liberal minister. How to get financial advantage in Canada? Easy, just get on the Liberal gravy train. But I'm sure it gutted the two Liberal members from Alberta. Respectfully, both these members have proven good at one thing in particular in Parliament, mindlessly reading out clearly ridiculous Liberal talking points on a number of issues. The member for Edmonton Centre, the one who responded to my question, is a minister. He just obfuscated in response to my question. I don't blame him. His colleagues, the minister from Newfoundland, her public assessment about his lack of engagement on this file for his constituents must have stung for quite a while. Let's get some real perspective on this. The carbon tax on clean burning natural gas rose this past April by about 27% to $3.33 per gigajoule, going up again this April Fool's to $4.21 per gigajoule. It's interesting that this tax on clean burning natural gas is more than the cost basis of the commodity itself. The average in 2023 was only $2.50. Incidentally, people pay GST on top of the carbon tax, a tax on a tax also increasing. Now, on January 13th this year, residents in the riding of Edmonton Centre felt temperatures drop to minus 45 degrees. The average home was using about twice as much natural gas as usual to keep residents safe and warm. So here's the outcome. It gets cold in the prairies every winter. And this government benefits by collecting more taxes. Cold weather in the prairies is a gift that keeps on giving to this government. But it's not free. It's an increasing transfer from the pockets of constituents of Edmonton Centre and other Canadians on the prairies to this Liberal government. So the member for Edmonton Centre should feel stung when his colleague announces his ineffectiveness in representing his constituents to all Canadians. Now, I know the response to my question is going to include one or a few of the Liberal bromides, as in, don't worry, here's the money we're spending in order to make it all things better, none of which have proven effective. Am I going to hear about the virtues of heat pumps? Am I going to hear that oil heat in Atlantic Canada costs more than natural gas, so it's only fair? But whatever is said, it won't excuse the Alberta Liberal members of this House for failing to speak for their constituents. And the regionally disproportionate share of carbon tax this government collects from Canadians who live on the prairies. So I'm asking again in this government's exemption from carbon taxes by region for political purposes should probably be reduced for all Canadians, regardless of how they stay safe and warm in the winter. Thank you.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, there are a couple of issues that I would like to address in what the member opposite just raised. The first part is to take into account the very real issue of climate change. And it's very frustrating when I hear from members opposite not only just not a climate plan, but an acceptance and a willingness to just let the planet burn at this point. And that is unacceptable, because what we're seeing right now, for example, in Alberta, is drought, people talking about the fact that they're not going to be able to use as much water in their daily living. We've been seeing wildfires all across our country, including in Northern Ontario. We've been seeing massive hurricanes impacting Atlantic Canada, and all sorts of other natural disasters. Those are impacting people's daily lives. It's impacting the cost of living when people's homes are at risk and being damaged by these things. It's leading to increased insurance costs for the fact that people are having to do repairs, that are losing their homes, and in the way that the fees are being considered by insurance companies taking into account these natural disasters. Climate change is real. The next part, though, is about carbon pricing. And it's so frustrating to listen to the complaints that are being made about carbon pricing, because they're factually inaccurate. And I say that because there is an economist from the University of Calgary, the home city from the member opposite, who did a study looking at how the carbon pricing system works in federal backstop provinces. And the conclusions to that study were that if you canceled the carbon price tomorrow, the people who would most benefit from that are people who earn over $250,000. That's not the affordability crisis that people in my community are talking about. People in my community, when they talk about issues, are talking about people, they're talking about how do we help people who have the greatest need. And the people who have the greatest need are not the people who earn over $250,000, which is what the people who would be benefiting from the proposal that they're putting forward. It makes no sense. They don't like hearing it about how 8 out of 10 people make more or like are better off with the carbon rebates and the system that we have in place under a carbon pollution pricing system, but it's true. And like I said, it's been backed up by further research, including from his own home province. So I would hope that they would take that into account when they're doing this analysis. When we're talking about issues about how do we help people who need help in fuel switching and to help reduce their costs of heating their homes, well, the oil to heat pump program actually does that, and that is applicable in the provinces that are signing up to help make it work. So I would ask him to please look into that option as well. But if we're going to talk about affordability, because that's also the other main issues that we're bringing forward, when we're talking about affordability, we're talking about things that we have made as changes like the Canada Child Benefit. It has actually had a massive reduction of child poverty right across our country. The Canada Child Benefit, that's a program that we brought into place. The Conservatives were sending $100 checks to millionaires. We changed that system so that now the people who need it the most are getting the help. And Statistics Canada, in their studies, has found that it's having an impact. We are going to fight climate change, and at the same time, we are going to be working on affordability and reducing poverty across our country.
The honourman for Calgary Centre.
Well, thank you. And as I predicted, there were Liberal bromides in there by the dozens, and I'm not sure there was just confusion in those talking points that came back at us here. But we heard a whole bunch of them there. We heard about climate change is real, of course. We heard about let the planet burn, as she stated in her speech, and I don't think anybody's ever said that. Anyways, the question was about fairness of applicability of the carbon tax and how it isn't being applied fairly, and it's being applied politically at this point in time, as opposed to judiciously across the country. I didn't hear one response in that jumble that actually said, here's why it costs less in Atlantic Canada than we're charging people on the prairies. And that's, I think, a mindless approach to how we actually need to address the way we actually come to tax Canadians. And this is a tax on Canadians, nothing but a regionally specific, very targeted tax where people don't have as much political representation as that member would like them to have in her party. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, I'm going back to the main issues that I spoke about, which is that this is about fairness and making sure that we're protecting Canadians right across this country from natural disasters that are impacting their homes and impacting their livelihoods. We are taking that action, and so actions like the carbon pricing system, but others as well, are so important as part of an entire cohesive system that works together. We're going to keep on standing up for Canadians. We're going to keep on fighting climate change, and I hope that the members opposite will join us on that.